There is a silent epidemic running through the hearts of millions. Not pain. Not fear. But a desperate craving. To be seen. We dress it up as ambition, brand it as confidence, polish it with charm. But underneath? It's a plea: notice me. Value me. Approve of me. So we chase being interesting. We rehearse our story. We craft our image. We try to become more entertaining, more impressive, more irresistible. And in doing so, we forget how to be interested. There's a tragedy in that. Because the people who move the world, who ignite hearts, who earn trust effortlessly, they don't chase the spotlight. They focus it on others. Dale Carnegie understood this long before social media made us all performers. He taught that if you want to make friends, influence people, earn loyalty, you don't need to dazzle. You need to care. Not pretend. Not manipulate. Not active listen while waiting for your turn. You need to care, deeply and sincerely. Be curious. Ask questions that matter. Remember the answers. Most people today are starving for something far more valuable than admiration. They're starving to feel understood. And you can give them that. Not with a speech. But with a pause. A question. A moment of real, undistracted attention. Abraham Lincoln, one of history's most respected leaders, didn't lead through charisma. He led through empathy. When he listened, he made you feel like the only soul on earth. And that is unforgettable. Because here's a truth carved into the walls of human nature: people will forget your brilliance, your charm, your accomplishments. But they will never forget how you made them feel. You don't need to be the most impressive person in the room. You need to be the most interested. And when you are, genuinely, consistently, something strange and beautiful happens. You become magnetic. Not because you're loud. But because you see what others don't. Ford didn't just build cars. He built possibility by understanding what working people needed. He was interested in them, and from that interest came innovation. Thomas Edison didn't stumble upon the light bulb by seeking fame. He listened, to problems, to pain, to patterns. And that made him a legend. What if your superpower isn't how well you speak, but how well you notice? What if your legacy isn't built on the words you say, but on the questions you ask? We've been taught to show our best angles. To be captivating, witty, polished. But no amount of charm can replace the raw power of sincere interest. Think about the last person who truly listened to you. Not nodded politely. Listened. Held space for your thoughts. Made you feel seen, not scanned. Didn't that feel like oxygen? Like healing? Like home? Now imagine being that for others, over and over, without ego, without agenda. That is how leaders are born. That is how movements begin. That is how hearts are won. In a world full of people trying to be interesting, be the one brave enough to be interested. Because that changes everything. You see, there is something disarming about real interest. It melts away walls that years of charm could never crack. It bypasses the armor people wear, the roles they play, the polished fronts they project, and it speaks directly to the core of who they are. You stop being another person in the crowd, and you become something rare, a witness to their truth. And when someone feels witnessed, when their story is heard without judgment, without competition, without interruption, they bloom. They open. They trust. Not because you were flashy. Not because you were impressive. But because you gave them space to exist fully. You made room for them in a world that rarely does. And that kind of presence? It is more powerful than any pitch, any speech, any attempt to prove your worth. Because the deepest influence doesn't come from commanding attention, it comes from giving it. The people we remember, the ones who shift our perspective, who breathe belief into us, who make us feel stronger just by being near, they were interested. Not distracted. Not half there. They weren't thinking about their next sentence while you spoke. They were with you, in it, fully. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's impact. That's rare. And in a culture that rewards noise, choosing to be present is a rebellion. It's easy to impress. It's hard to care. It takes patience to listen when you have something to say. It takes humility to be curious when your ego wants to be heard. But that's the difference between being admired and being remembered. Between being seen and being felt. We forget that the greatest communicators in history weren't just powerful speakers, they were powerful listeners. They made you feel like your words mattered. Like your story was worth something. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just speak to the people, he carried their pain. He understood their fears. He listened to the whispers of the unheard, and then turned them into a thunder of change. That's what being interested can do, it becomes the soil for transformation. So ask yourself this: Do you want applause? Or do you want impact? Because applause fades. But impact echoes. And it starts, not with charisma, but with curiosity. It starts with one question asked with real intent. One moment of silence that says, "I'm not here to talk over you. I'm here to understand you." And when you live like that, when you lead like that, when you walk through the world not trying to be interesting but trying to connect, you become unforgettable. Not because of how you made them look at you, but because of how you made them see themselves. That's power. That's legacy. That's rare air. And it's yours, not when you master the art of speaking, but when you devote yourself to the art of seeing. So look closely. Ask deeply. Listen with the kind of focus that silences the noise. Because when you make someone feel valued, understood, and truly heard, you've done something no performance ever could. You've touched the soul. And in the end, that's what they'll remember. Not the clothes you wore. Not the titles you held. Not the spotlight you stood in. But how you made them feel in the quiet moments, the ones where nothing grand was said, yet everything important was felt. Because life isn't measured by the noise we make, but by the silence we fill with meaning. And meaning isn't created by dominance or bravado, it's born from attentiveness, from genuine investment in another person's inner world. The truth is, people are not puzzles to be solved or projects to be managed. They are stories waiting to be understood. And when you lean in with the quiet confidence of someone who cares more than they need to prove, something remarkable happens. Walls lower, masks slip, and what's real emerges. This is the kind of connection that outlives the moment. It doesn't just change minds, it moves hearts. Because interest is more than a tactic. It's a way of being. A philosophy. A quiet revolution in a loud world. Think of the people who changed you. The ones who pulled you out of the dark, not by handing you answers, but by asking you questions that made you feel seen. They didn't rush to rescue you. They sat with you. They stayed long enough to understand. And in doing so, they gave you the rarest gift, the belief that your voice mattered. That you mattered. And that changes everything. It's not complicated. It's not dramatic. It's not even glamorous. But it is powerful. To lead with listening. To influence with empathy. To guide not by force, but by attention. That's the legacy worth chasing. In a world that pushes us to perform, to compete, to constantly prove our place, choosing to be interested instead of interesting is a quiet act of courage. It means letting go of the spotlight long enough to let someone else step into it. It means trusting that your presence, your focused, generous, undivided attention, is enough. And it is. Because when you show people they don't have to earn your respect, when you treat them like their story already has worth, you give them permission to believe it too. You show them a mirror they've never been handed before, not one that reflects what they should be, but one that honors who they already are. And that kind of impact? It can't be faked. It can't be scripted. It can't be manufactured. It's felt. Deeply. Quietly. Permanently. So if you're wondering how to leave a mark, how to be someone worth remembering, don't look for the next clever thing to say. Look for the person behind the moment. The soul beneath the surface. The truth hiding in plain sight. Because when you care enough to look, you'll find them. And they'll never forget you for it. That's influence. That's leadership. That's the legacy of those who chose not to dazzle, but to see. Because in a world that's always trying to impress, the rarest thing you can do is understand. The loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power. True power, lasting power, belongs to the one who listens when others talk, who watches what's not being said, who notices the tremble in someone's voice and chooses to stay a little longer. That's not soft. That's strength refined. Strength that's not threatened by silence or shaken by stillness. Strength that knows, people don't want your perfection, they want your presence. And when you give it to them, when you show up with no agenda but to truly see them, you create space for change. Because no one forgets the person who made them feel safe enough to be real. We live in a time where attention is currency and authenticity is rare. Where conversations are battles and listening is a lost art. But when you decide to be the one who pays attention, not just to the words, but to the pauses, the hesitations, the stories hiding in the silence, you become unforgettable. You become a lighthouse in a world full of noise. And here's the thing, you don't need the perfect words to create impact. You don't need credentials or charisma or clever lines. You need one thing, genuine interest. The kind that isn't performative. The kind that doesn't fade when the spotlight moves. The kind that says, "You matter to me," even when no one else is watching. That kind of interest breaks chains. It heals. It awakens people who thought they were invisible. Because when someone feels deeply understood, they no longer need to beg for approval. They stop performing. They stop pretending. And they start becoming. You were never meant to impress everyone. But you were meant to impact someone. And that impact starts not with being interesting, but with being fully present. Fully human. Fully here. It's not about getting people to remember you. It's about helping them remember themselves. And the irony? That's exactly what makes you unforgettable. So the next time you walk into a room, ask yourself, am I here to be seen? Or to see? Because if you choose the latter, you'll touch more lives than any spotlight ever could. You'll be the person they talk about years from now, not because you said something brilliant, but because you made them feel something real. And when the applause fades, when the crowd moves on, when the noise dies down, what's left isn't your performance. It's your presence. The quiet strength of someone who saw through the noise. Who saw through the mask. Who saw them. That's the kind of impact that doesn't echo for a moment, it echoes for a lifetime. So forget being interesting. Be interested. And watch the world open up to you, one soul at a time. Because in the end, the loudest legacy is left by those who chose to listen.